Hello, everyone. Welcome to Clarity 6.0 support training. In this section, we will review several enhancements related to staffing and task management. So what's new? I'll just talk about staffing first. The ability to create or add a staffing allocation is now available in the new staffing workspace. In 15.9.3, the initial release of the new resource management area or the staffing workspace was introduced using the configurable grid capabilities that we're used to throughout the application, but the ability to add a new allocation or a new record was not included. So why is this important? Again, driving adoption. The configurable staffing workspace helps users quickly review allocations from multiple perspectives and drives decision making. As you know, this new workspace continues to serve as a framework to further enhance the user experience with added capabilities, allocation capabilities that we'll be focusing on for the next several releases. So we're doing an incremental change this time with respect to what's new, adding that new plus button that is now there at the upper portion of the grid. I can also right click, or the user can also right click to insert an allocation directly below a particular row in the grid, or just use the plus button and let it position at the top of the grid. Then once you've selected the plus button, you need to allocate you need to allocate this staffing thing to a resource and an investment. The resource and investment are the two fields needed at a minimum to create a new allocation. So this slide is really just showing all the capabilities that are there from a configurable grid perspective, and now we have the plus button. So let's switch gears to the task management side. So what's new from a task management perspective? With this release, we've added the ability to collapse or expand all levels of the task timeline with a right-click action. You can simultaneously apply multiple resources to task assignments. You can locate my task assignments using a smart filter where the assigned resources is set to the current user. You can manage dependencies, in other words, predecessors or successors, in the table adjacent to the task timeline, and you can switch between a task work breakdown structure or row ID sort order. And last but not least, you can add baselines. Baselines are now part of the modern user experience as part of a module within a project. And you also have the added capability to visually compare current view to baseline in the task timeline. All right, so why is this important? So the collapse all, expand all, that was a customer request through the innovation program to help drive adoption. We're really glad to get that in. From applying multiple resources for task assignments, that provides that product manager an improved user experience and reduces the total number of clicks to assign work. Locating my task assignments using that smart filter provides team members, again, an improved user experience and reduces the total number of clicks to find my work. Managing dependencies in the task time reduces the need to support multiple third-party tools. I didn't say eliminate, but it reduces. And then baseline as a project model with project module with added capability to visually compare current to baseline offers tools to help users replan quickly, and update project plans accordingly. So what's changed? So from the collapse all, expand all, it really, as I mentioned, this is a customer request through the innovation program to collapse or expand all levels of the hierarchy with a right-click action. I perform this in the left-hand side. Just do the right-click and exposes two additional menu options for, as we say, collapse all, expand all. I can perform that action anywhere in the table. I get the same experience. Um, Next, sorry about that. The assigned resources field is now available as a column to help with selecting multiple resources and assigning them kind of in a single flow to tasks. This field is available for timeline board and grid and be configured in the details flyout as well. The assigned resources capability is available in all areas where tasks are used, including ideas and custom investments. In other words, it's not limited to just projects. Um, the ability to simultaneously remove assignments is also supported. From a filtering perspective, assigned resources can be used in the context of a configurable filter. Again, tomorrow you're going to learn more about smart filters, but from a task perspective, that current user option shows that icon, smart icon, indicating that the selection has pre-built logic to perform additional actions for the user. With the current user selected, the page is refreshed to show my task assignments. And I can save this as a view as well. From the This release also includes another customer request to define task dependencies. Predecessor and successor columns are now available for use in the task timeline. This capability allows you to define your task dependencies directly from the timeline view. With these columns in view, I can simply insert WBS or a row identifier to define a task dependency. Once you enter those dependencies, the timeline updates with the corresponding task dependency lines as well. And you're saying, hey, my users are used to using row ID. So there's a toggle there that allows me to switch, the left-hand column has got a WBS identifier as well as a row ID, which shows up in our predecessor successor column. So like Microsoft Project uses row, if your users are like that, instead they can just toggle to use that, and then the timeline itself and the predecessor successor columns update accordingly with the proper notation. Baselines. Another customer request in the form of the comparison to baseline in the task timeline. A banner appears at the top indicating compare is using the current baseline. The page is updated to include current baseline information represented as kind of gray shaded colors combined or overlapping with the current color-coded timeline view. You can hover on those and get the dates for baseline. You can hover on and get the dates for the current view. Basically, you get a really nice visual of how you're doing compared to baseline. In addition, a baseline module, the lower left visual, a baseline module can be configured to manage baselines from within a given project. Okay, let's take a look at the staffing capability for creating a new allocation, and then I'll shift gears and take a look at the new task management capability in terms of the collapse and expand, the assigning multiple resources, locating my task assignments, managing dependencies in the test timeline, comparing current view to baseline in the test timeline, and we'll take a look at that project baseline module as well. So let's switch and go to the product. Okay. Product. All right, I'll start with the staffing enhancement. I'll go ahead and click the staffing icon here, and it should be on my generic view. So as I mentioned, the 15.9.3 release introduced the first version of the staffing workspace, but it didn't include the add row or add an allocation. So obviously you can see that there. I can go ahead and click that, and it's going to insert a row at the top. I can also, as I mentioned, come down here and right-click action, and I can insert a row if I really targeted where I want to put something. So you have that flexibility too. I'll just come back up here. I can search on a name like Tom Morris. There he is. I can search on Crushers as a team and identify the resource that way, or look for architect. I spell it right, and I can pick Tom Morris right there. So I'm looking for an architect. I didn't know who yet, but I'll pick Tom. The next thing I need to do is, allocate an investment. I'm going to look for data-driven, whoops, driven modules project, and it'll take a second here, but I successfully created an allocation for that investment. All the usual rules apply when adding an allocation. For example, allocations are applied based upon default allocation percentage is kind of one thought. I do have the ability to make allocation adjustments in like the totals columns or the per period fields, and I can add other fields, right? I've got a column selector here to go and add any kinds of information across different objects to my heart's content to help me with staffing decisions. But the resource and the investment are the two fields needed at a minimum to create that new allocation. As a reminder, I'll go into kind of one of my pre-built views, my investment to resources views. I don't have the ability to add an allocation in this view. I can edit in this group mode. So to add an allocation, I would simply come back out of a grouping and back into edit mode, and I can add that new allocation. I shouldn't call it edit mode. I can just come back out and add a new allocation. All right, so that concludes the demo for creating a new allocation. Let's switch gears and talk about the task management improvements. I'll go to projects. Let me just sort there. I'll go into e-commerce portal and land on the task timeline. All right, first thing I want to show you was that expand collapse. So over here in the table, I can right click and I get my collapse all, expand all options, right? Once I can do that anywhere in the grid, you notice that I have expand all even though I'm already expanded. We just made a decision to keep that there in order to get this out as quickly as possible. I can click and collapse those two individual items, expand all, and you get it. It comes back. But I don't have those options when I'm over here in the timeline or down below the grid. Those available, they're not there. They just become available. All of the options are available just from this left-hand grid. All right, so that's the expand all, collapse all. Let's talk about assigning multiple resources to tasks. So I'll come down here to this database development task, and you can see I've added the assigned resources column to the grid. It's configurable. I'll just click into here, and I get a multi-select option here to add, Peter and Jason Berry. I'll click out of there, and I've just added those two people to those tasks. I can click on the flyout and go to the assignments location and see, sure enough, there they are with their associated assignments. I can come back here and remove those two as well. I'll go ahead and do that. So, the assignments follows the same logic as the assigned resources in the PPM Gantt. The system makes certain assumptions in terms of allocation of projects, allocation to projects, and other rules. The assigned resources capability is available in all areas where, I think I took off the wrong guy. Doesn't matter. That assigned resource capability is available in all areas where tasks are used, such as ideas and custom investments. In other words, that capability here is not limited to just projects. And I showed you how I could remove as well. Let me switch over to the grid real quick. And from a filtering perspective, I have the assigned resource option as well. I have that smart filter here for current user. It just knows who I am. And I'll go ahead and do that. And it filters down on showing me only my tasks. I can come to the task timeline and get that same view as well. I'll go ahead and remove that task. Now, this release includes another interesting capability for managing dependencies. You can see the successor, predecessor columns have been configured in the grid. I'll just kind of create some more real estate here to show the timeline on the right. I'm using my WBS identifiers here. I'll go ahead and put a 2.6 in here, click out, and you'll see the new line was drawn. I can come down to my 5.2 and add a successor 2.1 and click out, and you get those new lines that are put in there. And like I said, this is interesting, but my users all are into row ID. So I can toggle and it converts what were WBS identifiers and converts that all to row IDs. I can go ahead and move something. I'll move this guy down, and it's going to update the successor predecessor information as well. I'll just kind of move it back, and I get that same behavior. I can go ahead and insert 23 in line 10 as a successor using the proper notation, and I get a new line in there as well. So that is the how the timeline gets updated with the new dependency timelines and how you manage that in the grid. I do want to point out that the successor predecessor information is only available in the timeline view. It is contextual, meaning that I can see what's happening on the right when I make changes on the left. So at the moment, that information is not in the grid or board views. So let's talk about compare baselines. I can go ahead, there's a new option here in the actions menu, compare to baselines. I'll go ahead and slide this over a little bit. And it brings in, a banner up front, up top tells me that I'm comparing to the current baseline. Oops, I'll scroll and you can see I'm bringing in some shading information. Then I can hover on that and it tells me what that baseline start and finish was for that task or for this phase, right? And I can hover on the actual event as well. Basically, I get a really good view of how things are looking. I think just a commentary about this particular task timeline is as we start to move to the right, things apparently have been shifting out compared to baseline. Another capability here is the baseline module itself has been configured via Blueprint. I have various right-click actions to make something be current or update. And I also have my column panel here to bring in any number of attributes associated with the baseline object. You can see a number of things here related to earned value. I can see a shield where it represents field level security. Meaning that the field level security is now available to baselines. So budgeted at completion is under field level security control. So based on my group membership, I would either have view, edit, or it would be suppressed altogether. In fact, budgeted at completion has been relabeled to help my users understand the information. The out of the box label is BAC. And so that was updated using field level security. So let's take a look at that in the administration area. Go to attributes. I have a view based on my baseline, right? I've selected the baseline object here and it's showing me everything that's available here to secure. You can see straight off the label was changed just to simplify the experience for the user. It is a secured item. And you can also see the groups that have been assigned to have either edit or access privileges. Okay. While we're in administration, I'll do one more thing and go into blueprints, and we'll go to our favorite blueprint. I'll go into edit mode and go to modules, and you can see baseline is an available option to be configured, and in this case in third position. I will hit exit because I don't want to make any changes here. But that concludes the demo of baselines in task timeline, the baseline module, baseline field level security, and that concludes the demo for all staffing and task management updates.